Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. And we have begun a study of the resurrection and 1 Corinthians 15 specifically. Now, pardon me, I've spent 5 lessons so far. This is video number 6. But what I've been doing for you and with you is to try to establish a framework for understanding the resurrection. Fundamentally important for understanding 1 Corinthians 15 is the understanding that no matter what our concept of the resurrection might be, we must understand that it is Paul's iteration of his expectation of the fulfillment of God's Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel. I have shared with you how in numerous formal public debates and countless private conversations, my counterparts, I have asked them, is your eschatological hope based upon a yet future fulfillment of God's Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel? Their answer has been no. July of 2016, I asked that question of Dr. David Hester in a formal public debate here in Ardmore, Oklahoma. And he said no, his eschatological hope was Adamic and Davidic, Abrahamic. Now, here's what that means. I'll put this as simply as possible. Dr. David Hester, and I might add, Steve Gregg, Joel McDermott, on and on. John Welch, Mac Deaver. These are just a few of the individuals that I've had formal public debates with and have answered the question, no, their eschatological hope is not based upon God's Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel. All right. So here's the simple argument. Very simple, very powerful, and irrefutable. David Hester, my eschatological hope, it is not based upon, it is not taken from God's Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel. Point number 2, Paul's eschatological hope was taken from God and based upon God's Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel. Therefore, David Hester's eschatological hope, John Welch's eschatological hope, Mac Deaver's eschatological hope, Steve Gregg's eschatological hope, on and on and on it goes. Doesn't matter. It simply doesn't matter. If you say your eschatological hope is not based upon, not taken from God's Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel, you're teaching a different eschatology from what Paul taught. I'm sorry. That's just all there is to it. Now then, I want to share with you in this morning's video, I want to build on this concept even more. I want to show you that there is one eschatological hope, as Paul says in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 4. There is one hope. There is not an eschatological hope of Adam versus Paul and Israel. There is not an eschatological hope of Abraham or of David versus Israel and Torah. It is one hope. In Romans chapter 5, Paul says, therefore, just as through one man sin entered the world, and death through sin, therefore death passed upon all men because all sinned. Now what's he doing? He's taking us to Adam. He's taking us to the garden, just like Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, 22. As in Adam all men die, even so in Christ shall all be made alive. So Romans 5, the entirety of Romans in many ways, in Romans 5, Paul sets forth the exact same narrative, the precise same problem as he does in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. So notice, sin and death in Adam. Well, in verse 14, he says, death, what death? The death of Adam. The death of 1 Corinthians 15. Death reigned from Adam to Moses. Well, folks, guess what? The Adamic death was not solved by Moses. It was not solved by the law of Moses. On the contrary, even though the law was wonderful and it was spiritual and it was good, Paul would say in Romans chapter 7, that which was intended for life became death to me. So there's nothing inherently wrong with the law, i.e. the law of Moses, except Paul said death reigned from Adam to Moses, but he's not through. He's not going to tell us that the law of Moses solved the problem of Adam. On the contrary, look what he says in Romans 5:20. The law, what law? The law of Moses. The law entered that the offense, sin, might abound. Now, look, God did not give the law of Moses to make man sin more. Man's never had a problem sinning. God gave the law of Moses to make man more acutely aware of his sin and of his condition. So what do we have? We have Adam, sin, curse, continued all the way through. Notice how that means that it is inclusive of Abraham. All the way through unto Moses. Entrance under Moses of Torah. Under Torah, the offense, sin, abounded. Where there's law, sin abounds. So here is Paul talking about the continuity, the one curse, the one death, from Adam to where? Now, notice he doesn't say from Adam until the end of time. No. He says from Adam to Moses. And under Moses, the problem was exacerbated. That's why Paul would say in Romans 7, I was alive once without the law. The commandment came, sin revived, and I died. Paul is talking about Israel under Torah, and thus exemplifying and personifying his own personal participation in that identical situation, but he is recapitulating the story of Adam. Adam was alive, the commandment came, sin revived, he died. So here's Paul reiterating that same narrative. And thus, once again, he had to say the law, which was intended for life, that which was good, but he said, I'm carnal. I'm sold under sin. Paul said, I could not keep the perfect requirements of that perfect law. And because I could not keep the perfect requirements of that law, I sinned and I died, Paul said. What death did he die? The death of Adam. Oh, wait a minute. Here we are. Paul said, I experienced the same thing that Adam did. I experienced the same identical death that reigned from Adam to Moses. All of those under Torah recapitulated Adam, his sin, his death. Now, doesn't that prove to us beyond any shadow of a doubt that Paul is not talking about biological death? I mean, after all, here he is, a living, breathing human being saying, well, I was alive once. Without the law, the commandment came, sin revived, and I died. Now, again, he's talking about Israel under Torah, but his participation in that life and in that death. And thus we have Paul defining for us the death of Adam and defining for us the death to be overcome at the resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15. As in Adam, all men die, even so in Christ shall all men be made alive. Oh, but wait, it was not under and it was not through Torah that the resurrection would occur. It would be at the end of Torah, not at the end of the Christian age, not the end of the gospel. at the end of Torah that magnified the offense and magnified the sense of the need for redemption and salvation from sin and death. Hey, don't forget, order yourself a copy of Exegetical Essays on the Resurrection by Sam Frost. Go to my website, BibleProphecy.com. Order the book, send me an email, send me a note when you pay for it, reminding me that you saw the offer on YouTube or Facebook, and your total cost will be $15. That will save you over $7. All right, thank you so much for joining me this Tuesday morning. We will see you with more on the flip side.